Yeah.
And this ties into another pillar at Marama. The third pillar is it is that it's the relationship with caregivers.
Yeah.
It's that expectation from the people we interact with that we are going to get better. That changes the dynamics in so many ways that are so subtle but so profoundly impactful,
Yeah.
right? So you can imagine if you twist your ankle, say you sprain your ankle or tear an ACL or something happens, you end up in PT. And Eddie ends up in PT and he's in his 30s or 40s, right?
Yeah.
And or your dad ends up in PT and he's in his 80s.
Hmm.
The difference in care you're going to get because of the expectation associated with your age.
Sure.
And what we want to do is get a PT who's going to treat your 80-year-old dad just like you, who's
Yeah.
going to say, no, work a little bit harder. I'm going to give you these exercises because I'm expecting you to be able to go for a run. And
Yeah.
I'm expecting you to be able to go back to playing basketball the way you used to and want to, and that you get so much delight from.
Yeah.
That's the kind of engagement versus the PT, the physical therapist, who's going to be like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, we're not expecting you to build that muscle back ever.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to push you that harder. I'm not going to give
Mhm.
you these exercises that are going to prepare you for that.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens at Marama, when we have caregivers, and because we've been in the senior living space now for 5, 6 years,
Yeah.
we've seen that a lot of people who are trained in that, they feel like their job is to do it for you, is to
Mhm.
feed someone who's struggling to feed themselves, or to write something down for someone who's struggling to write something, or to go find that book or that thing, that magazine, or find the color for them if they're doing something. And what we recommend they do is gently, kindly encourage
Yeah.
our residents to do it for themselves, to
Yeah.
maintain that independence.
Yeah.
And if it takes a little longer, do it anyways.
Yeah.
Have the time, have the patience, cultivate that patience so that we can help and support our residents in maintaining as much independence as possible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's three pillars. It's diet, it's exercises and activities, engagement. It's the type of care.
Yeah.
And then the fourth is the environment. And
Yeah.
our environment plays a huge role in our behavior.
Yeah.
So there's Atomic Habits, like
Yeah.
one of the most popular books on the planet. James Clear talks through how we can set our environment up so that we do the things, like if we have a list of all these brain engaging activities and we have a list of these brain health priorities,
Yeah.
but then we make it harder to do that. And it's easy to just turn the TV on, or it's easy to eat the donuts that are on the countertop, right? Then it's going to take way more effort to
Yeah.
not eat the donut and to not turn the TV on. But if we put the TV in the cabinet and we lock it away
Yeah.
and we hide the remote from ourselves, now all of a sudden it's harder to turn the TV on and veg out. If we
Mhm.
don't buy donuts, if we don't come home with them, they're not sitting on the counter. If instead there's fat bombs that are at eye level in the refrigerator,
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's easier to engage in the activities and the food, the diet, the things that are aligned with our priorities and our goals.
Yeah.
And so, how do we design an environment that does that? So, that's one part of environment. The other part of environment is just a non-toxic environment.
Yeah.
Indoor air quality is terrible.
Hmm.
Um, Things are off-gassing, it gets concentrated. So, opening doors and windows, having air filters, keeping down the toxicity of what we inhale
Hmm.
is important, very important, because there is inhalant Alzheimer's. We
Yep.
see that
Yep.
cigarette smoke and air pollution contribute to Alzheimer's risk.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a little bit underrepresented outside of the functional medicine space. This is mold toxicity
Yep.
directly can lead to cognitive decline. Mercury, lead, this is well documented. And so being aware of that, testing for it, eliminating it
Yeah.
as much as we can, wherever we can, is important.
Yeah. Great. Great. Yeah. No, this such great pillars. And, what I'm hearing from you is so much of this when you're looking at like a situation like ours, where, you know, we're caregivers, we're doing this at home, and trying to set up an environment like what we did was, we all got under one roof and we decided, hey, we're going to create a recode center, right? And we're all going to follow the protocol. But what you're really highlighting is it starts with that psychological, it's that mindset shift. And when you're talking about that expectation, it flies in the face of what we've heard for so many years because most of neurology or most of what caregivers and patients have heard is basically diagnose and adios.
Right.
Um, get your affairs in order, and there is dignity in that, but there is this mindset shift of expecting. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning. We do need to visualize, what we'd like it to be, and that kind of starts everything off because if not, we don't put the effort in. So it is really powerful. And what's amazing is that you're doing it in this memory, not memory care, but a memory recovery center. And I got to ask you about that. I mean, where did that come from? This is first in class, really, that I know of. Where did this idea or where did this desire, this motivation to create Marama come from?
Really, everything that we've done is because someone asked. It's because a family like yours came to us and said, "Hey, they didn't have the ability to keep their loved one at home." She was a woman who I can relate to. She was, she had her dad was aging. He'd been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She had read Dr. Bredeson's book, listened to it during her commute to work. But she's working full time. She's got teenagers so that she wants to show up at their sports games and a husband that she wants to maintain a relationship and a house to manage.
Yeah,
And all of that is too much already.
yeah,
And so the thought of taking this on to care for her dad, to cook for him and create these activities and to engage him and have him move into her house, she's like, as much as I love that fantasy, it's just not reality for
yeah,
me. And so where can I send him?
yeah.
And I got that email. It was really just this kind of crazy day. It was my first day back from maternity leave. I got this email from a woman. Um, and during my lunch break, I was like, okay, where can I send them? Where can I refer them to? So I started Googling, who's doing Bredesen protocol in a senior living setting. There were a couple places that kind of referred to it, but you could tell they weren't doing an organic ketogenic diet. They kind of said like, oh, we'll drive you to your Bredesen trained provider.
Uh,
And we have a gym and we have the things, but they were on their own. You could tell. And you could also tell they were going to sit down at dinner and have somebody eating cake and cookies right next to them, right? Which is really hard when you have cognitive impairment to remember that that's not on your diet, or an apple or a banana, right? Isn't this healthy for me?
yeah,
We have those conversations all the time, but when you can create an environment that's fully immersive, where the default is an organic ketogenic diet, the default is that everybody's going to get up and do yoga or, engage in meditation or whatever's on the agenda, and that everyone's kind of excited about it, and that there's enough staff to get people engaged and excited about it. That's really crucial. It's right that it's easy for us to say, oh no, I'm tired today. I'm going to crawl back in bed. I don't really
yeah,
want to put in the effort.
yeah,
It's hard. It's hard and it takes effort.
yeah,
And so having enough people there to keep everyone engaged is a really crucial part of it. And of course, Eddie, it was like this day that I had this idea and realized there was this gap. I was like, well, how hard could it be? And then I realized now, 5 years later,
yeah,
I'm like, oh, it's really hard.
yeah,
But it's also so amazing. We had a woman move into Marama here in San Diego last May, and she moved in with a MoCA score of 24. She noticed her cognitive decline, and for her birthday, she moved in on her birthday as a gift to herself while her house was being remediated with mold. She moved in for 6 months, and
yeah.
she moved home with a MoCA score of 30. And
Uh,
that it was
that's
just
amazing.
like, yes,
That's
like
amazing. Yeah,
that's the point.
yeah,
That's the point. Is like, to instead of her going in the direction of needing memory care, being
yeah.
institutionalized, she went in the opposite direction. She got back control of her brain health, got
Yeah.
it back to optimal. It's a work in progress.